Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here. And with the markets seemingly collapsing in front of our eyes and so much being discussed, obviously, about this coronavirus and its global impact, I wanted to have the editor of the mindunleashed.com on, and you guys are familiar with her. She's done a lot of great work in the alternative media. Her name is Emma Fiala. You can follow her at By My Elf. And honestly, I wish that I was having you on under better circumstances. However, a large swath of people have now called me a fearmonger for reporting on what we see before our very eyes. So, Emma, before we get started, tell people about yourself, how you started in alternative media, and then what your take is on what we're seeing globally.
Well, thank you for having me on to talk about this. First off, there is so much to talk about, and it's very important to get this stuff in front of people right now. In terms of my story with independent media, I kind of broke into this scene a couple of years ago when I got an internship with Abby Martin on the Empire Files. From there, I was just able to connect with a lot of people. So as soon as that ended, I started working with Mint Press News, and then I was working with Anti-Media, and now I've found my way over to the Mind Unleashed after that massive Facebook purge, and a lot of stuff got shaken up, and a lot of us collected back over at the Mind Unleashed. So that's been nice that we had that to come back to.
So Emma, I mean, all right, let's start talking about it, because I know that you follow me on Twitter. I follow you on Twitter. Mm-hmm. I was pretty damn reserved about this a month ago. You know, I started seeing some things in China that were upsetting, and I was telling people I was very concerned about the way their police state had been put in place and that we can't get real information out. This is obviously now spread to Iran, to Italy in massive levels, and in the United States, they are clearly lying about the numbers. There's no way they could actually be telling the truth about the numbers with only 1,600 people in the entire country being tested as of 2 days ago, when there are probably, and I shouldn't even say probably, hate me for this if you want, guys, but there are more than 1,600 infections, in other words, positive cases in New York State alone. Hands down. There's no chance that's not a reality right now. So I'm sorry if you can't cope with reality, but this is real. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to bow down to, I'm not supposed to report on this. What are you seeing, and what have you seen in the last month?
Well, I first started paying attention to this back in mid-January. I know some people had this on their radar even before that, so I don't want to come across as like I saw it first. I've been paying attention for longer than everybody else. But I was skeptical a little bit, like you're explaining with the way that China was handling it with the police state and the mass quarantines and stuff. But it became apparent pretty quickly, especially once it began to spread, what we were actually dealing with. And I am completely with you. I think we have thousands of cases here. I think the numbers are completely wrong. I think we've had thousands of cases here for weeks. I don't think that this is something that is just suddenly popping up right now. I think that some reports have said that things were happening in Seattle for 6 weeks. I think that it might have even been longer than that. I've looked into some statistics with flu reports and influenza-like illness reports in some of the bigger cities, including Seattle. And there were massive spikes in that stuff, even in December. So this might have been here for a lot longer than we realize. Maybe not, but it's definitely something to consider. And we need to be paying attention to it. I'm really glad that you're informing people about what's going on.
Well, don't you think it's suspicious that, we had such a bad flu season? There are some reports that in the United States we had 65% more death than that. We now, we had those phone calls over 3 weeks ago now from a gentleman saying that people had tested positive in Buffalo, New York, and that still is not in the public eye. Still today, that's not in the public eye. I am here to tell you I have confirmed that. I have confirmed that from, I'm not going to say who, the relative of somebody who heads up hospitals in the Niagara Falls, Buffalo region. I am here to confirm that there is at least one case a mile away from me. I don't know if they took him out, but in Fox Hospital Friday night, no doubt in my mind. Again, I know the nurse that treated this person, and it is not being reported. Everything is going through the mouthpiece of officials. It is going through the mouthpiece of the CDC, the WHO, de Blasio, and Cuomo in this state. And I'm not saying I trust them. I don't trust them, period. However, they're making the point. New Jersey's already closing schools. Hofstra closed today. Columbia is closed. This is going to be a domino effect. They admitted 2 days ago one of the reasons they have not closed schools in New York City is because there would be 114,000 homeless children. That is an issue. That is an infrastructure issue that they don't know how to address. So at this point, I can't help but feel that we are literally all frogs in a pot of water, that the heat is being jacked up incrementally. So when those final thumps start coming in, we just take them.
Yes, I pretty much agree with everything that you're saying. I'm kind of comparing a lot of this to what happened with 9/11 and any other major big thing that's happened, where there's the people in control, the people on top, the elite, whatever you want to call them, probably sat down and thought, how can we use something like this to our advantage? How can we come out on top? How can we benefit from what's happening right now? And I have no doubt that people sat down and talked about that and are still talking about that. And that might have something to do with the delay in response right now, because there's other things that are going to come out of this that they have wanted to do. Who knows? Honestly, I don't think there's that much time right now to kind of get lost in that. I'm definitely a person who questions things. I'm all about checking into all of the various conspiracies and stuff. But right now we do have a global pandemic on our doorstep. So I think it's really important to also focus on how to prepare yourself and what we are going to do, because this is here and it's happening. And we're probably going to have to think more when it's done about where it came from and the things that are coming from it that are part of the police state, part of the technocratic state. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right. So when I was riding back from D.C. A little over a week ago now, that's the first time I really said, hey, now's probably the time to buy canned goods. I'm buying canned goods. I said, hey, panic buying is going to start in the United States. I saw it here in D.C. I couldn't believe it. And that's why I told people this. And you're a fearmonger, Jason. Lo and behold, there was panic buying, okay? I also said, they're being very honest that the first outbreaks are going to be in nursing homes. So if you have a family member in a nursing home, probably now is the time to get them out if you actually love them. If it is your father or your grandfather or your husband or your wife, and you don't want that last interaction before a quarantine, God forbid, you need to get them out. And then we saw what happened in Kirkland. And now we're seeing the subsequent cover-up of what's happening in Kirkland. No mainstream outlet has reported that we had a patient in Kirkland go from asymptomatic to having symptoms an hour later to dead 3 hours later. A 4-hour turnaround time. Not one. And you can call me a fucking fearmonger for that. But I'm not the public information officer hired by this institute to come out and say that in a calm manner and then not be challenged by the media on it. And I also reported on it 2 days before that because it was clear that woman who had lost her mother, that's the one he was referring to. And they didn't even want to test her post-mortem. This isn't Jason Burmis. These are family members. These are real people. And now what I'm seeing, Emma, which is very disturbing, is either the hyper-paranoid crowd, the hyper-Trump crowd, or just the disinformation artists that love to fucking stir the pot, the shit posters, the liars, the black ops, whatever you want to call it. They're all one thing to me. Either you're a shitty person and you're doing this for a kick, you're shitty, or you're working for the state and the propaganda margin, and you're a shitty person. They're claiming crisis act or no one's dead. How do we start to actually get facts out to people that they can use? Because right now, people's 401ks are getting gutted, as I said they would, and they're panicking. I'm not telling people to panic. I'm telling them to get ready because this is a reality. The market will never be the same after this. They shut it down for 15 fucking minutes today. When are people going to wake up? How do we get these facts across to people?
Unfortunately, there are going to be some people who are not going to wake up until this directly affects them or infects them. um, and that's just the reality of the way it is. I'm with you on, my goal has been to help people prepare. I don't want anyone to panic. I want people to prepare. If you prepare now, then you save yourself from panicking later. And that's very important because people will panic. We cannot reach everybody. It's going to happen. There are people who might even understand what's going on right now, and they will panic later anyways. So we need to account for that happening. Preparing is the biggest thing to do, and to encourage people to keep talking to others, because as this spreads, you are going to start knowing people who are personally affected by it. I have a connection whose sibling died, and was told that it was from coronavirus. That death is not reported in the official count. That took everything to even though I knew what was going on and I've seen this coming, that took everything to a different level for me personally. That person has since erased all of the information that was shared about that, though. I don't know if they were
told to. Do you know how old that person
happened,
who is supposedly dead is?
In their 50s.
Okay. Because we know about the woman who's in her 30s in Nebraska.
Yes.
And she's in the biocontainment unit. And now people are trying to say that she had underlying medical conditions. Now, I'm not sure. I haven't, I don't know whether that's disinfo or not, because in the original press release, that's nowhere to be found other than the fact that she was a special needs person. But she was still traveling overseas. So what kind of special needs are we talking about? And it seems like she was traveling alone. So, are we talking somebody that's on the autism spectrum, somebody that has a slight mental disability? Are there physicality issues with her breathing? I don't know, but I know that hasn't been reported yet. And I know this woman is in her 30s, and they keep trying to beat in that this is only affecting older folks. Yet, the patient zero in Westchester, the first person that they actually admitted to, is a man in his 50s that seemed to be doing just fine and did not have any kind of underlying health conditions. He's currently in critical condition. We know the infection rate in a household seems to be 100% when somebody gets it. Not 50%, not 75, 100%. Let's explain that to people. The Westchester man went home. He had 4 family members, all infected. The man that drove him to the hospital, infected. One of his business colleagues infected, and then infected his family of 6, so 5 more people. If you are living under the same roof with somebody who has this, you are probably going to get it. And now, I want to explain, that doesn't mean you are going to die. That doesn't mean that you are even going to seek treatment. I don't know any of that. Okay, I don't. I do know that right now, from the numbers, we're looking somewhere between 2%. South Korea says 0.6%, and they have the biggest pool of 14,000 people, which is interesting to me. But I think they're also testing people that are not sick, and we're talking about 2 strains here. They're not comparing the L and the S strain as one or the other. They're comparing it as the same thing. So one could have a very, very low death rate, maybe twice the flu, 3 times the flu. Again, maybe that's why we saw this flu season. And the other strain could be the more deadly version. I did notice that I retweeted the gentleman who was begging to be put into Mount Sinai yesterday. And he was in isolation. That tweet is now gone. I don't know whether it got scrubbed from the internet, but it was trending yesterday, and now it's just not there. And this was an Asian American man who was begging to get out of his hospital so he could be treated by his doctor brother at Mount Sinai. Now, I hope that tweet reached the right people. I don't know that it did, because there's so much disinformation and misinformation out there. On that spectrum, Emma, how do we use discernment to see what is real and what is not?
That is always hard, and that is something with this specific issue that you're probably running into as well, that we only have the information to consume and report on that's in front of us, and a lot of that is from mainstream media sources, because that's just the way it is right now as this develops. That doesn't mean that we are just parroting what they're saying and believing everything that they're saying, but that's a piece of the puzzle. And we have to look through that through the same skeptical lens that we look at most things. And a difference between people like us is that we're looking at Twitter and we're looking at Facebook, and we're looking at Reddit, we're looking at Telegram and WeChat and other sources to find some of these anecdotal stories that are people sharing their personal experiences. And that's what we started seeing with what was coming out of China. If we would have just followed the mainstream narrative in China and not paid attention to any of those other things that were getting out, we would have had a completely different picture of what was going on for quite a while. Some of the stuff that might be out there might be incorrect. It might be disinfo. It might be people trying to, unfortunately, make a joke out of this and post something that's completely not true.
They did it
but
in New York City.
Always the case.
Right? If you saw that video in New York City, and Gateway Pundit fucking reported on it, and I completely tweeted to them, fake news. There was a separate video, and this was what? An Asian man with a mask lying there like we had seen in some of the China videos. And before I even, retweeted it or anything, because a lot of people have that impulse, they see the fear, they're like, oh my God,
yes.
And they just hit pap, pap. I went through the thread. I went and searched, and clearly there was a second video where the guy had his shoes on and was putting his head up and looking around and thought he was funny. Hey, buddy, fuck you. How about that? Not funny. And, again, when media buys into that hype, that is fear-mongering. That is not doing your job. Having the inability to admit when you're wrong or tell the truth and spin it to try to save your own ass is also disgusting. And speaking of that, I'm unsure if you saw this yet, but we got to cover it. Donald J. Trump says Saudi Arabia and Russia are arguing over the price and flow of oil. That, and the fake news, is the reason of the market drop. And we all know at this point that the supply chain has been broken, that they moved the Muslim Uyghurs into 80 plus factories. Now, you may see that in news articles on the Huffington Post, and you may see that in the Independent and the Guardian. You're never going to hear it out of the mouth of fucking Rachel Maddow. You are never going to hear it out of the mouth of all these pundits on the left or the right. That should have been the top story last week. The top story. And tell me who was hammering at home. No fucking buddy. Nobody. So the markets, people's 401ks are going to hit. I see this as, the predator class also managing the economy in a way that they have their ultimate pump and dump, where they make sure that their infrastructure is still in place for the most part. And the people that really get hit here are the middle class, upper middle class, the assholes out there that make $10 to $20 million a year and think that they're part of that class. Got news for you, buddy. You're not. You're about to get gutted. You're an ant to them. You mean nothing to them. You mean the same thing I mean. Okay? That's who you are. You might be able to protect yourself a little bit better than me because you have the finances to do so. But in the grand scheme of things, they don't care about you. So what are you predicting? Who do you think comes out on top on this? And what kind of time frame are we looking at before we eventually see some kind of resolve?
It is so hard to tell because we're dealing with so many different things right now. We're dealing with the actual virus, which in China, they're still under quarantine. There are millions of people in China and Italy that are under quarantine still. And we haven't started quarantining anything here. So say we start quarantining places here, and that lasts for over a month. We've got that we have to deal with. And we don't know, because we haven't seen this resolve in any country yet. We don't know how long that is going to take. But then there's the residual effects. There's like the earthquake happens, and then there's the aftershocks. And that's the economy. That's supply chain disruption. That's other health impacts too, because if the hospitals are full and all the beds are full, people who have medical emergencies, people who have to deliver babies, people who have all kinds of things happen are not going to be able to access the care that they would normally need. And that's going to have effects down the line too. So I don't know how long it's going to take for all of this to resolve. This is like earth-shattering stuff that hopefully it's not as bad as it feels like it's going to be. But the potential impact is, it could be years long. We don't know because no one is done with this yet. And people are kind of acting like China isn't still quarantined. You have to look at the videos of what happened in China. This stuff is real. And we might not respond in the same way here, but people were ripped out of their homes, ripped out of vehicles. There was like snatch and grab stuff happening. Maybe to quarantine people, maybe it was something else.
But this is days old numbers in New York. but there are 44 people under mandatory quarantine, and that has not, I repeat, has not really been explained. And when they talked about the 4,000 people under precautionary quarantine, they were quick to say, yeah, no one's really following that, and there will be repercussions. And we, basically we've already been visiting and people aren't there. That's not hyped up. Why? Because they know it's throughout the entire fucking state. And they are really, really doing their best to manage the numbers and the rollouts of closings so it's an easement to the economy. The people that need to can get out before their throats get cut. South by Southwest, we're talking about $100 to $200 million impact in a local economy. That's big Hollywood players. That's people from around the world coming into that area, not only to see a concert, but to do big business. That didn't happen. Once that happened, people needed to realize it wasn't just Knotfest across the seas. Slipknot announces that, and then you see South by Southwest. We're seeing a chain effect of the real cancel culture, not some Hollywood bullshit social justice warrior movement, but people like Russell Brand saying, I'm not going to do my show. So I'm wondering, do you think that there will be, at least within the next month, a mass closure of all types of events? Will we even see March Madness at this point? They've already hinted we won't.
Yep. Yeah. The NBA and others have already warned that people need to prepare to play games with no fans, no audience, which I guess is good to put the possibility out there. I think we're going to see more stuff canceled. But I honestly don't know if we're going to see mass quarantines and stuff like that happen that we've seen in other places, because the US is late to the game in all of this, that it's all over the place at this point. I don't know what a quarantine would actually help with, because we're seeing it everywhere. You know as much as I do that it is everywhere now. Maybe in some rural areas it hasn't gotten there yet, but I do cringe when I see videos of political rallies and all these things with thousands of people at them. Personally, I'm like, that I wouldn't do that right now. But people aren't considering these things. I don't know if it's worth in the long run canceling that stuff, because I really think it's everywhere anyways. So I don't know what we're going to see in that way, but we have started to see a lot more states, localities declare states of emergencies or disasters, and that's the precursor to them being able to do more stuff, because that unlocks their ability to get funding and to do certain things that they couldn't otherwise legally. So I think that's definitely something to keep an eye on, is the new areas that are declaring states of emergency. What does that mean is going to potentially come a couple days later? So we have to look at those first couple of states and cities that did make those declarations and see where they're headed.
I'll tell you where they're headed. 15 miles away, I had a Black Hawk helicopter drill where the military takeover was very real. They did it for the first time a year ago last year with less hype around it than this. And I was like, I missed it. And then last week I did see helicopters in the sky. Again, this is 15 miles away. And I didn't think much of it. And then this was sent to me. And, well, they did that last year. No big deal. No big deal. They did it last year. No big deal. But then you look at the unconventional warfare exercises over in North Carolina, the same week they had them in Los Angeles with Apache helicopters. And, those don't look like Muslims on the back of that truck that they're fighting. They don't look like Muslims. And in fact, when the Army surrounds these people, and, I played this ad nauseum, but I'm going to continue to, because it needs to be played. That's an SUV with a gun pointed at it. That's an American citizen being asked for his papers. Those are American citizens firing on U.S. military. Those are them rounded up by the military. This is a residential area that's a little rural. This isn't a city area, but it sure is residential. And if you'll notice, explosives are being popped up. Oh, no big deal. Well, how about dropping into a local Costco or Walmart parking lot? But I'm an alarmist. I've been covering this for 20 years. When I saw this 20 years ago, I didn't like it. I sure as fucking hell don't like it now at all. Especially when you take it to the level of a mounted gun on the back of a truck with 4 guys on the back of it, firing in our military. That positions our military think American citizens are the enemy no matter what you believe. So you want to call me a fearmonger, that's fine. That's a real military exercise. Emma, in closing, what should people be paying attention to today? Where can they find your work, and what do you have coming up on this?
Well, if you go over to themindunleashed.com, I try to do it every day, but sometimes I can't. I have 2 kids, which also makes my my perspective on this a little bit different, because I'm caring for 2 other humans that will somehow be affected by this. But so sometimes that obviously gets in the way of my speed of reporting on this. But if you just search my name on The Mind Unleashed, my last few articles are all about roundups of the latest headlines about coronavirus. I'm also putting together videos going over the exact same headlines, basically just going through those articles. That's usually included in the articles and linked to in there. And also in those articles, you can find a link to our Telegram channel that we've made, that we're just tossing every headline and development and tweet and anything that we see that we think people need to know about. We're putting that into a news feed that we think everybody needs to know about. And if you're on Telegram, you can follow that channel. It's let me bring it up and make sure I give you the right name. It's at COVID-19 Report. If you are not on Telegram, you can also find that in a browser at t.me/s/COVID-19 report. Like I said, we're just kind of tossing everything into that channel, because there is news coming from every direction right now. And I know it's hard for the everyday person who's not at a computer all the time to keep on top of it. So we're trying to put stuff in there so you can go stay on top of it if you want to. If you don't, check out those articles, because I go through everything and I put it into a list and I add a little extra information and try to connect some dots so that you don't have to do it, because most people don't have that time. I'm lucky we're in this situation where, because we're in independent media, this has become our job. So we've got the time for it. So follow that channel, check it out, and check out our articles on The Mind Unleashed.
Thank you so much for joining me. I wish we were talking under better circumstances. I never thought that I would wish that we were talking about like an Epstein or Weinstein tragedy, some kind of injustice there. I'd probably be just as fired up. But this is a human issue at this point. It's a human issue that no matter what, whether you have it in your neighborhood, it is going to affect you somehow. And people are being mad at me for saying that this is a 9/11 type event, but it's a slow rollout. And when did we see the markets like this? We haven't seen it like this since 9/11. If we actually hit those levels, maybe people will start paying attention. Thank you so much, Emma. You're doing great work. Keep it up.
You too. Thank you for having me on.
You betcha. So there she is, Emma Fiala. She's an editor over at themindunleashed.com. If you like what you see, if you want to support independent media that's not going to give you bullshit, $5, $10, $15, it means the world to me. You bigger donors keep me alive. Throughout this, we all still got to pay our bills, all right? And I'm not trying to fearmonger. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a liberal. I'm not a libtard. I'm not a cuckservative, okay? I hate those fucking terms. I'm a human being like you are. And I hope you realize now with people's 401ks being looted, that this is a real issue on a scale my generation has never seen. Never. And I'm sorry that's the case. I wish it were not. So if you can help me out, I'm going to keep doing this. Look for videos today on Weinstein and Corey Feldman. Corey Feldman's movie is supposed to drop at 9 p.m. today. I am going to be getting a ticket. I know a lot of you guys are. So we're going to do a video on that and everything we know about that upcoming film, My Truth, the rape of 2 Coreys. So again, guys, I'm trying to do balanced reporting on everything, and especially this issue here. I'm not telling you to live in fear. I'm really telling you to live in love and have a plan with your family, and don't get blindsided by this when it's too late. I love you guys, and I will see you on the flip side.